Now this happened last night and I'm still freaking out about it. I really wish I had called the cops. I might actually still make a report later today. So for reference, I'm a tall 26-year-old female, and I have two beautiful daughters, 3 and 5 years old. We live in New Mexico in a small town about an hour and a half away from the city. With that being said, on to the story. My sister came from out of town to visit, so we all met up at my mom's house to go hang out. Of course, not seeing my sister for a while naturally led us to hanging out late. We ended up leaving around 9:30 p.m. On the way home, I decided that we should stop at Walmart and grab a few things we need, since we're in town and live so far away from any stores. First though, my daughters and I stopped for gas because I really hate getting gas any later than 7, because, well, all the weirdos are around, and obviously it was well past 7 at this point. My daughters and I were having a blast in the car, just singing and making fun of each other on our way to the gas station. My girls were super excited to go to the gas station because the one we stopped at is really huge and it has this big aisle full of toys that my girls were already asking to look at. Anyways, as we park, I get out to put my mask on, and I notice out of the corner of my eye 2 guys in a bluish silver Honda staring in my direction. One of them was pointing at me through his windshield, which wasn't tinted, so I could easily see into his car. His car is parked at the pump directly behind my car, and I'm parked right in front of the gas station's door. I didn't get really nervous right away because I grew up in this town and I used to hang out with a really bad crowd as a teen. So in return, I know some sketchy people, unfortunately. So I thought maybe they just recognized me. That is, until they got out of the car. I turned to look at them, and I know I'd never seen them before. So I just made a note of it, and then went back to getting my daughters out of the car. When I got my girls out of the car, I had turned to my left side towards the gas station door, and I noticed the more thug-looking guy was just standing there with his arm under his shirt, to where I pretty much couldn't see his hand. I noticed something reflecting light near his waistband. I knew it didn't look like a gun, but instead looked like a handle to a really large hunting knife. I was immediately put off by this, and I felt my body heat up and a wave of anxiety wash over me. Every bad thought just started racing through my head. Like I said before, I used to hang out with a really bad crowd, and I've really been through and seen some things that I wish I didn't. But because of that, I'm a paranoid person and tend to be hyper aware of my surroundings. Don't get me wrong though, just because I'm petite doesn't mean I'm not strong. I can certainly pack a punch, trust me. Anyway, I grab my daughter's hands tightly and start ushering them inside. The guy then says, "Whoa, let me get that door for you." I smile and just say thank you, confidently not breaking eye contact with him. I don't know why, but I always tend to read people by their body language and eyes instead of the words coming out of their mouth, and this guy's body language felt aggressive. I had that feeling of dread completely wash over me. I got my daughters inside, and to my relief, there was kind of a lot of people inside, so I was able to relax a bit. My daughters went straight to the toys, and I followed, allowing them to look at them for a minute. We then got our snacks, paid for gas, and went outside to move my car to the pump. As I parked and started putting the fuel in my car, I opened the back doors and buckled up my daughters. As I'm leaning over, I had looked out my front window and I noticed the guys coming out in a hurry. For some reason, my fight or flight kicked in and I shut the door. I took the pump out of my car and put it back in, even though I still had $3 left, but I didn't care. I walked around my car to get into the driver's seat, and as I shut the door, I then glanced over and noticed the driver of the other car turned all the way around staring at me. Right then and there, I knew I was in trouble. My hands started shaking. I buckled up and peeled out of there. I didn't even care if I got pulled over by a cop. In fact, I was kinda hoping I would because that would probably be a good thing. I looked in my rearview mirror when we stopped at a red light, and I had then seen the car coming up behind me. The light was red, but there were no cars coming from either side, so I decided to just run the light, and what do you know? The car followed. I'm now internally freaking the fuck out now. My oldest daughter starts picking up on this and asks if I'm okay. What's wrong? I tell her nothing and that I'm just really tired and want to go home, so I think we'll just go to the store tomorrow. She then says okay. All I can think about is getting out of town and onto the road that is practically a straight road for half an hour. If I can get on that road, I can lose these guys, because luckily for me, I have a 2014 Impala that was a cop car. So it has no governor and actually has a performance mode, which I can turn on when I hit the traction control button. I glance back and I see this car is so close to me and I'm scared they're gonna hit me. I see something waving out of their window and I realize it's the guy holding his knife and he's trying to get me to pull over. No, fuck that. What, do they think I'm that stupid? The guy starts swerving back and forth trying to scare me, and I'm just praying I make it, because once I make this last turn onto the straight road, I then lose cell phone service too. I actually remembered a story on Southern Cannibal's channel about a girl being followed and how she tricked the person following her because they didn't know all the roads and the turns on them. I'm hoping I lose them before we get into the actual mountain where there are sharp turns, but if not, I now have a plan. We finally get to the straight part of the road, and the car's trying to come up to the side of my car. So I wait till he gets close, and I hit the button. My car then picks up speed and really fast. I don't lose them though. They were still following me, and we're about 20 minutes out of town. And I know the turns are coming up quick, and you have to slow down, because there's no way you can take them that fast. Plus, there's usually always elk and deer on the road at this time. I begin to start crying from all the fear and stress because my baby girls are in the back seat. My youngest keeps telling me to slow down and that she's scared, and my oldest keeps asking me what's wrong and what's going on. And I'm just trying to tell them that we're okay, that we just need to get away from the bad car that's behind us. Sure enough, we start rounding the corners, and what do I see? A fucking elk in the road. I know this was a dumb decision, but I didn't see any other choice at this point. The elk was in the other lane walking across away from my lane, so I decided not to slow down and just pray and hope the elk doesn't come towards me. We fly right past it and the elk doesn't move. I keep glancing back and I finally see the car coming and they make it past the elk as well. I scream fuck and just keep going. There's a town coming up and it has one of the sharpest turns that I've ever taken. You have to slow down to 10 miles per hour to take it. I'm now clinging onto the hope that they don't know this area or about this turn, so as I start approaching it, I let go of the gas, slowing down to 30 miles per hour without touching my brakes so they don't see me brake and know to slow down for the turn. I made it through the turn, but I could feel my car wanting to go up on 2 wheels, but I also knew that this wasn't enough speed on this turn to actually even flip my car. I start hauling ass out of there and I can hear screeching tires, so I know it worked. They took it too fast, which gave me enough time to lose them. I come up on the second little town. I turn down a road and turn right onto a dirt road and shut my lights and car off. I managed to find my phone, and thank God, I have 2 bars on it, enough to call my kid's dad and tell him what's going on. He says he's on his way, and at the same time I'm on the phone, I see the car pass. I tell my kid's dad this so he knows they're headed straight towards him. I'm sitting there trying to calm down my kids, but it's not working because I'm crying and shaking so bad that I can't even keep my hands on the wheel or hold my keys. It felt like hours, but the car never passed back by us. I'm still so nervous and just waiting for my kid's dad to show up. He finally shows up and he tells me to calm down and just follow him closely home, which is still 7 miles away. I'm following him, but we never see the car again. We made it home safely, so we put our kids to bed, and I explained everything that happened to my kid's dad. He decided to stay the night with us, so we felt safe. I haven't gotten any sleep yet because I'm just still so shaken up from the whole thing. I can't stop thinking what would have happened if they caught us or found out where I lived. What would they have done to my daughters and I? How would I have escaped with my kids? I really don't think I'll be leaving the house for a while. I'm glad we're safe and alive. But to those crazy 2 thugs who followed us, I really wish you would have wrecked and hit that elk. Fuck you. Let's never meet again. I'm just still so shaken up, and my brain is foggy from the lack of sleep and adrenaline. Everyone stay safe out there. People are crazy, and you just never know who's going to target you, and for what reason. Pay attention to your surroundings, and always trust your gut. If you happen to have children like me, do whatever is necessary to protect them. Hug them as often as you can, and always remind them how much you love them. Please, just stay safe out there.
I worked as a Walmart cashier for a little over a year. I quit in August of 2015 when I went away to college. As a cashier, you see a lot of people in a day, especially at Walmart. And after a while, you don't even see people's faces when you look at them, but there are some people that you see so often you start to recognize and sometimes learn their names. There was this one guy, always in the same Green Bay Packers hoodie and Chicago Cubs baseball cap, that would often seek out my line no matter how long it was, just so he could stare at me and rarely say a word. Whenever he did say anything to me, he would always lean across the register to get closer to my face. He always gave me a really bad vibe, but when I asked other cashiers about him, they said that he had never been weird around them. One of the girls even said he was a close family friend. After that, I dropped the issue. One night after I'd been there for about a year, I was working a 2 to 11 shift. Those shifts were always the worst because you'd be there for 3, sometimes 4 front-end managers, but also because it takes the chunk out of your day when you were actually going to do anything. So I'm down on the self-checkout. It's about 10:15, so I'm counting the minutes until I can shut it down at 10 to 11. The creepy guy comes in the front door and makes a beeline for me at the self-check podium. When I see him come in, I instantly get nervous. He walks up and says, "Can I still buy a cell phone card and electronics?" I told him I only worked as a cashier on the front end, so I didn't know anything about electronics, but he could go back and check. He seemed peeved by this answer, but he walked away without another word. About 10 minutes later, he comes up with a prepaid phone card and said there's no one at the register in electronics, so I activate his card and hand it to him, telling him to have a good night, but he pushes the card back at me without saying a word, and I say, "Is something wrong?" To which he replies, "These minutes aren't on my phone yet, are they?" I was confused by this statement because, of course they weren't. He had just bought the card. I shook my head, and he waved the card in front of my face. "Why the fuck are you just standing there? Reactivate my phone." When he talked, he was so close I could smell his breath, and I was a little scared. I wanted to put in a call to my manager so that someone could come down and help me. This is where I should probably mention that I'm about 5'3", and he is closer to probably 6'5", and very stocky, so he was towering over me, and the thought that he could easily overpower me crossed my mind, but I get so nervous whenever men yell or cuss at me because my dad was never the type to yell or cuss. I took the card out of his hand and he slammed his cell phone on the scanner. I was trying not to let him know I was nervous, but I was terrified. I knew I had never put minutes on a prepaid phone before, but I don't dare tell him that in fear of what he might do. So I read the directions, pick up his phone, dial the number, and as I'm putting in the card number, his phone runs out of minutes. I try to call back and get an error message. I'm at a loss. I meekly hand him his phone back and say, "I'm sorry, something went wrong. I don't know what is happening." As soon as I say it, he takes his phone, opens it up, tries to dial someone, and when it doesn't work, he looks at me with furious eyes. He screams, "What the fuck did you do to my phone? What the fuck?" His voice is echoing in the store, and unfortunately we haven't gotten the end of second shift rush yet, so there is no one around. He closes his phone and opens it again, trying to make another call, but when it doesn't work, he throws the phone down on the scanner again. He says, "I don't know what you did to my phone, but you better fucking fix it." But this comes much more quietly, practically a whisper. At this point, I'm worried he's going to put his hands on me, and I don't know what to do. I put in a call for a manager from my register, and then I say, "I've called someone that might be able to help, but we're at shift change right now, so it might be faster for you to take it to the customer service desk." He picks up his phone off the podium, still mumbling under his breath that I fucked up his phone, and I'm hoping I can get out of there before he comes back, or at least have someone else down at the self-check with me. Another 15 minutes go by and I don't see him again. As I'm picking up items that people left by the registers, getting ready to shut them down for the night, he comes back and stands by the podium. He still looks completely pissed off, and my stomach has sank. He made that finger motion that means come here without saying anything, and for some reason that makes me even more nervous. When I'm standing in front of him, he leans so close to my face that I think he's about to kiss me or bite me or God knows what. I try to take a step back, but he takes a step forward when I do. A creepy grin comes across his face as he says, "The girl up there fixed it. Simple fix. But next time, I expect you to know what to do. Understand?" I nod because I don't think I can speak. He gets impossibly closer before saying, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I never should have done that, especially to a pretty girl like you." When he adds the last part, he lightly uses his fingertips to brush my bangs to the side. I took a step back and he said, "Let me make it up to you. Let me buy you a drink." I shake my head. I say, "No thank you, I'm only 19. He says, "So we'll get a couple of beers and go back to my place." Again, I shake my head. "No, it's really okay. I'm not much of a drinker. I have an early morning tomorrow." He looks displeased with this answer and says, "Tell you what, I'll wait over here by the door just in case you change your mind." I smile at him weakly and tell him to have a good night. When I see him walk through the security, I quickly shut down the registers and sign out of mine. Then I run over to find a manager to tell about the whole thing. The third shift manager that I tell looks at me like I'm lying, and when I'm finished says, "I know Todd. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He doesn't have it in him. You're probably just being dramatic." She then turns to another older cashier behind her, shakes her head and mumbles, "Teenagers." I ask if I can have someone to walk me to my car, and they tell me that management is in a meeting and the security guy went home already. So I clocked out and went to the bathroom. I waited in the bathroom for about 10 minutes before coming out and attempting to go to my car. When I walked around the corner through the security things, he wasn't sitting on the bench right there like I had been expecting. I relaxed a little before I realized he was standing just outside the door, far enough away to keep it from closing, smoking a cigarette. He has his back turned toward the door. Luckily, I never went out the front door, so I always went to the corridor and not the side door. I quietly closed the door behind me so maybe I wouldn't catch his attention. I rushed to my car, which was fortunately very close to the building. As I'm quick walking to my car, I hear him shout, "Hey, why are you avoiding me? Come here." At this point, I take off into a full-on sprint, which is not easy because I'm wearing Sperry's, so it's like running in clogs. I get to my car, get in, lock my doors as I'm starting it, and don't even bother with my seatbelt. By that point, he had made it almost all the way to my car and was still yelling, telling me he just wanted to talk. I took off as fast as I could and took the longest way home with the most turns and twists that I could. When I got home, I told my dad about the experience, and he was so angry that no one had answered my calls or believed me. He called the store manager the next day and complained. I was never contacted about his complaint, but from that night on, whenever I saw that guy, I would run to the bathroom, or if I couldn't get away, I would put out my lane closed sign and turn off my light so he couldn't get in my line. And you always hear people talking about the people of Walmart as being trashy, but they never tell you about the select few that are scary as hell.